In December 2019, the US Navy's Arleigh Burke-class destroyer was patrolling international waters off the coasts of South Carolina and Florida when it encountered the Russian surveillance ship Viktor Leonov, which was operating a little too close to US maritime boundaries. The behavior of the Russian ship raised suspicions, prompting the US Navy destroyer to closely monitor its movements. Over the course of the following days, the US Navy destroyer observed several concerning actions by the Russian ship, including its violations of international maritime laws, such as using running lights in reduced visibility conditions and failing to respond to communication attempts from commercial vessels seeking safe passage. Despite attempts by the US Navy to communicate and coordinate with the Russian ship, the situation did not improve. So, due to the ongoing security concerns, the U.S. Navy vessel, doing what a responsible Navy would do, requested assistance from the Coast Guard. In response, the Coast Guard issued a Marine Safety Information Bulletin to alert other mariners in the area about the presence and behavior of the Russian ship, having narrowly escaped from a close call to what could have been a disaster. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as we explore the consequences when a Russian spy ship approaches a U.S. aircraft carrier too closely. A spy ship, also known as a reconnaissance vessel, is designed for the specific purpose of collecting intelligence, often through advanced electronic surveillance methods. In a broader context, any ship designed to gather information could be classified as a spy ship. These vessels are typically under the control of a government due to the substantial expenses and sophisticated equipment involved. While they are commonly associated with a nation's navy, they can also be operated by intelligence agencies. Typically, such naval trawlers disguise themselves as civilian vessels, such as fishing boats, which are expected to remain in a particular area for an extended period, giving the intelligence ship more time to play its spy games without getting caught. During the early Cold War, spy ships emerged as specially designed vessels solely dedicated to intelligence operations. Today, all major powers utilize them for various purposes. Apart from eavesdropping on communications and tracking enemy fleet movements, they also monitor nuclear tests and missile launches, particularly of potential intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. This expanded role reflects the evolving nature of global security concerns. Back in the 1960s, gathering submarine signatures was a crucial task for Cold War spy ship fleets. These signatures, unique patterns of noise, were vital in identifying specific submarine types, which was crucial in anti-submarine warfare. During this period, the United States operated approximately 80 vessels, often labeled as environmental research ships due to their covert nature, while the Soviet Union had about 60 ships, often converted from trawlers or hydrographic research vessels to serve as spy ships. Generally, spy ships remain in international waters or just beyond territorial boundaries to avoid violating any borders. From this vantage point, they utilize electronic equipment to monitor sea and air traffic, radio and radar frequencies, and attempt to intercept and decipher coded radar or phone communications. This is primarily achieved through passive methods like radio receivers or passive sonar, which allow them to collect information without alerting potential targets. However, in certain situations, they may also resort to active measures like radar or sonar to detect movements of aircraft, missiles, ships, or troops, although this carries the risk of exposing the ship's true purpose and compromising its mission. And due to its proximity to the monitored area, which is closer than a fixed installation, especially near shorelines, the surveillance conducted here is often more effective and, in some aspects, superior even to that of reconnaissance satellites. In addition to spy ships, tracking vessels also possess some of the same capabilities and, being under the control of their respective governments, can be used intermittently for similar purposes, such as monitoring enemy missile tests. Up until the late 1980s, the Soviet fishing fleet was renowned for outfitting many of its thousands of ships with advanced signals intelligence, or SIGINT, and electronic intelligence, or ELINT, equipment, effectively serving as auxiliary spy ships that tracked Western naval vessels and intercepted electronic communications, despite their primary role being commercial fishing. Presently, Russia's naval fleet comprises 5 active classes of spying and surveillance vessels, including the Primorye-class surveillance ship, Balzam-class intelligence ship, Yuri Ivanov-class intelligence ship, Yantar and Vishna-class intelligence ships. These Russian spy ships are like the stealthy ninjas of Russia's naval strategy, sneaking around to gather intelligence and keep an eye on global maritime activities. Instead of jumping into combat, their main gig is surveillance, focused on collecting data about foreign naval movements and capabilities. This intel boost gives Russia a serious edge in understanding what's happening at sea. Sporting top-notch electronic surveillance systems, these ships can eavesdrop on all sorts of communications, from radar pings to radio chatter. They're not just listeners, though, they're also equipped for electronic warfare, ready to mess with enemy electronics using countermeasures to jam their radar and communications. And as previously mentioned, originally, these ships were not intended for espionage. Instead, they were converted from the hulls of large trawlers, repurposed to serve a new and more strategic role. The spy ship Viktor Leonov, which caused the stir in December 2019, was none other than the Vishnaya-class vessel manufactured in 1988. Much like its peers, this craft also packs quite a punch with its Volga radar gear, a host of electronic warfare sensors like Profile M, Vizier M, Octave, Cone, Dawn 1, and MGP 303. Plus, it's armed to the teeth with the Igla portable anti-aircraft missile system and 2 AK-306M anti-aircraft gun mounts. So, when such formidable ships start pulling reckless stunts, it's no joke, especially given the prolonged political standoff between the United States and Russia on the international stage. Therefore, in response to such antics, the US Navy brings out the big guns, using both defensive and offensive strategies to maintain its edge and deter such behaviors. In response to such threats, the US Navy usually begins with the Combat Information Center, or CIC, giving a command to alert all crew members about the approaching danger. The CIC acts as the central command of the aircraft carrier, tasked with gathering, processing, and disseminating information related to combat scenarios. Then, in the next phase, data about the incoming Russian spy ship is collected from diverse sources, such as radar, sonar, visual surveillance, electronic countermeasure devices, radio communications, intelligence reports, and operational directives. This data is then organized, presented, and examined to grasp its tactical significance. The aircraft carrier sets off a series of alarms that echo throughout the ship, accompanied by flashing lights to alert everyone to the potential threat. It's like the ship's way of saying, "Attention, we've got a situation here." In response, all crew members swiftly move to their assigned positions, prepared to carry out their duties. US Navy personnel prioritized clear and concise communication to ensure everyone is on the same page during this critical time. Once the spy ship is detected, the aircraft carrier activates defensive measures to thwart the enemy's attempts to gather protected information. Crew members are instructed to power down sensitive electronic devices to prevent interference or unauthorized data access, maintaining operational security. The operation continues in a controlled electronic environment until the threat is neutralized. In the next step, the High Command on the US Navy aircraft carrier deploys offensive electronic warfare systems to counter the spy ship's surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities. Radar jamming disrupts the spy ship's radar signals, impeding its ability to detect and track targets. Moreover, the aircraft carrier might deploy decoy systems, such as electronic decoys or chaff. These decoys mimic authentic signals, aiming to confuse the spy ship and complicate its efforts to differentiate between real and false signals. In response to the spy ship's signal intelligence, US Navy aircraft carriers leverage a broader range of signal intelligence capabilities to collect network and communication-related data from the spy ship. This intelligence yields valuable insights into their activities, intentions, and capabilities, which are essential for customizing the pathway to the next steps. The US Navy aircraft carrier's intelligence team closely observes the actions of the spy ship, documenting any aggressive maneuvers and evaluating its proximity to the carrier group. This analysis informs decision-makers on how to react effectively for countermeasures, considering the perceived level of threat. In the next stage, the U.S. Navy crew carries out a thorough risk assessment based on gathered intelligence, pinpointing potential outcomes of a direct confrontation with the enemy spy ship. These outcomes could vary widely, from a devastating exchange of fire to a lethal collision. This detailed assessment guides the command in determining the most appropriate response, which could range from diplomatic engagement to defensive posturing. At this point, the approaching vessel is repeatedly hailed to ascertain its purpose for approaching, and efforts are made to defuse any potential threat through negotiation. While these immediate and diplomatic responses are being formulated, a dedicated group of U.S. Navy crewmen utilizes advanced surveillance systems aboard the aircraft carrier to continuously monitor the surrounding area. Their goal is to detect and track the movements of the spy ships and relay this information promptly to higher command. Next comes the crucial and final step, when the U.S. Navy Threat Response Team must make a decisive choice. However, this is no simple task. Spy ships, unlike traditional warships, are primarily focused on gathering intelligence rather than engaging in direct combat. If detected, they might lack a certain level of defensive capabilities required for confrontation, so their main priority is usually to avoid such situations. Therefore, their presence near U.S. aircraft carriers might not immediately endanger the carrier's safety. However, of course, if advanced surveillance indicates that the ship poses a threat to U.S. sovereignty, then it must be addressed. In the worst-case scenario, U.S. Navy sailors on the carrier may need to take offensive actions. But before doing so, they must engage in clear communication with the approaching threat to ensure they are adhering to international rules of engagement. In pursuit of this objective, the aircraft carrier might choose to await the diplomatic response from the spy ship for a specified duration before contemplating any potential lethal response. However, the paramount priority remains the avoidance of confrontation and the deployment of non-lethal deterrence. This is because operating in international waters presents inherent challenges, where even a minor miscalculation could result in the compromise of sensitive information or, at the opposite extreme, escalate into a catastrophic nuclear conflict if a forceful response is executed improperly. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 serves as a poignant historical example. During this crisis, a brief standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union over Cuba culminated in American warships launching an attack on Soviet nuclear submarines in international waters. This escalation nearly precipitated a global conflict of unprecedented scale, with both superpowers poised on the brink of a nuclear war. So, this harrowing episode underscores the critical importance of striking a delicate balance between defensive and offensive measures in navigating such treacherous domains. Despite that, the recurrent provocations by Russian spy ships flouting established international maritime laws have been on a notable upward trajectory in recent years. These provocative maneuvers pose a significant challenge to the United States Navy, necessitating a nuanced and robust response strategy to safeguard national interests and maintain global stability. For example, back in June 2019, amidst the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, a Russian destroyer engaged in a perilous maneuver against the USS Chancellorsville, dangerously closing the distance to a mere 50 to 100 feet, imperiling the safety of both its crew and the ship itself. The situation became so intimate that the crew of the Chancellorsville could literally see Russian sailors enjoying the sun on the stern of their vessel. This risky encounter compelled the Chancellorsville to swiftly reverse all engines to avert a potential collision. However, in the aftermath, Russia countered by asserting that it was the US ship that had initiated the incident, adding to the complexity of the situation. Fast forward just 7 months to Thursday, January 9th, 2020, and the USS Farragut had its own heart-stopping moment in the North Arabian Sea. This time, it was an unidentified Russian vessel who, while going about its business, charged at the destroyer with an approach that was not just bold, but also deliberate, daring, and downright reckless. As the tension escalated, Navy officials were left with the unenviable task of assessing the situation and devising a plan of action. The Russian ship's audacious maneuvers brought it within a hair-raising 180 feet of the American destroyer, all while picking up speed like a runaway train hurtling toward disaster. Despite the USS Farragut's frantic attempts to communicate its urgency through signals, the Russian vessel appeared to be playing a game, refusing to yield the right of way. The situation reached a critical point where the American crew had to consider the risk of a collision looming large, so they sounded 5 short blasts, which is the internationally recognized maritime signal for danger of collision, and issued a stern final request for the Russian ship to alter its course in accordance with maritime rules. The Russian ship, after some initial resistance, finally acquiesced and altered its course, avoiding a potential catastrophe. However, the delay in compliance with international rules during its aggressive approach had already heightened the risk of a collision. Similarly, in January 2023, a Russian spy ship was spotted approximately 100 miles off the coast of Hawaii, engaging in some sort of suspicious activity. While Russia seems to be quite unapologetic about these antics, what do you think the best response should be to these provocative actions? Do you believe the US Navy should react with more force? Or is there a risk of escalation if these powerful nations become involved in maritime conflicts? Drop your 2 cents in the comments section and make sure to hit that subscribe button for a steady stream of captivating naval chronicles that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.